So every year the NBA gives out a number of awards to honor and recognize players for their accomplishments throughout the season, and these awards vary from Most Valuable Player to Sixth Man of the Year award, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, just to name a few. Now, just a few years ago, in 2017, the NBA added what they now call the Hustle Award, which recognizes the player who most notably provides energy and effort on the court, and this year the league awarded this to our very own Thaddeus Young. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that this award existed, and apparently neither did Thaddeus Young himself, as you can see from the quote here in an article from Rob Schaefer. I love Thad's response in that, "Oh, okay, that's cool," because in a way, it's kind of a whatever award, but we're still going to recognize Thaddeus for it, not just for the award, but also just because he was such an incredible part of the Bulls roster this past season. And I won't just be talking about that, I will also address what does Thad's future look like as it pertains to next season, and whether he'll remain in a Bulls uniform. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here, hope you're all doing well. So for some context, the winners of the previous Hustle Award since its inception were Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Smart, Amir Johnson, and Patrick Beverley, which is pretty good company. All of these guys are known for their effort and energy they bring on the court every night. And for someone like Thaddeus Young, going from one of his worst seasons last year under Jim Boylen, where even myself, as a Bulls fan, thought that we might be better off waiving him, to then having one of the best seasons in his 14th year in the league. Thaddeus Young finished the year averaging 12.1 points per game, 6.2 rebounds, and 4.3 assists, better in every statistical category from last season, and his assist numbers were actually the best that he's had in his career by a wide margin, actually. The best season he had in terms of his passing since his lone season with the Timberwolves in 2014, when he first teamed up with Zach Lavine, actually. On top of that, he was the most efficient he has ever been in his career, shooting a career best 56% from the field and a career best PER of 20.3. That was the third highest among all Bulls this season, behind Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic. And really, prior to the Vucevic trade, it was hard to argue against Thaddeus Young being the Bulls' second best player on the roster, and arguably their most versatile player in terms of his performance on both ends of the floor. His efficient scoring, his playmaking, his hustle defense, and also just his veteran leadership and IQ on the court was unmatched compared to anyone else on the roster. He truly was an integral part to this team, and really, he was one of the few players on this squad that actually showed heart, hustle, and effort every night, which is why he probably won the Hustle Award. And if you guys have been following the channel for a while now, you know that I love the hustle players. I love guys that give it 100% for the whole game and every game, not taking nights off, not falling asleep on defense, not getting your head down when the opposing team goes on a run. So with Thaddeus Young, he went from being one of my least liked players on the Bulls to now one of my favorite Bulls players. All of that being said, though, the challenging question the Bulls are going to have to face this offseason is what to do with Thaddeus Young and his partially guaranteed contract. So I'm sure most of you likely already know this, but for those that don't, Thaddeus is going into the last year of his contract that he signed with the Bulls in 2019, and the final year of his deal, which is worth $14.2 million, is only partially guaranteed, meaning that Thaddeus Young will get $6 million of that money even if the Bulls decide to waive him, and the Bulls would have to hold that money on their books towards their salary cap. Or the Bulls, they could pick up his option and fully guarantee the last year of his contract at $14.2 million, which of course would also go onto their books. Now, Thad's impact and what he means to this Bulls organization, aside from that, which I'll get into in a little bit, and how that will actually impact his future with the Bulls. But with all that aside, there are pros and cons to each direction that the Bulls would take as it pertains to his current contract. Because on one hand, you could waive him since he's going to be 33 on the last year of his deal, and you may not really view him as part of the Bulls' long-term plan. And by doing so, you free up over $8.2 million in cap space that you would otherwise not have if you were to fully guarantee that deal. But at the same time, you're waiving a player who has been a very important piece to the roster, a very versatile player who can actually give you defense, which is something the Bulls need, and also a locker room presence that Thad provides. Guys on the team really value and respect him, and it's well known that him and Zach Lavine are very close, very good friends. So yes, you free up cap space on your books if you were to waive him, but that still leaves you paying $6 million to a guy who won't even be playing for your team. So do you pay $14 million for a guy who will actually play and a good good player at that, or do you pay a guy $6 million to play on some other team? That's really what it boils down to. Now, of course, there's also the possibility of doing a trade for Thaddeus Young where, you would fully guarantee his contract and then you would trade that to another team for a piece that you need on your roster. Thad's trade value, although not as high as it likely was around the trade deadline, is still decent considering he's still a very productive, versatile veteran. His contract isn't that bad, and it's an expiring deal at that. So it is a tradable asset that the Bulls can use going into the offseason if they were looking to include him in a package to make a big move for a player that is maybe more of a long-term play that fits a need on this roster and fits the timeline. And by trading Thaddeus, that also gets his salary entirely off the books, so you're not subject to waiving him but still having that $6 million on the payroll. Now, what should the Bulls do with Thaddeus based on everything that we know and what he brings to the team? But also understanding the contractual constraints. Well, this is a bad answer, but when people ask me this, I always say it really depends. It depends on what opportunities and options become available to the Bulls this offseason, because Thaddeus is a valuable player for all the reasons that I just mentioned, and I love his hustle and effort on the court. I love that he has a huge voice for this team as a veteran and is well respected in the locker room. And the Bulls also really need his defense, so I personally don't think it's worth giving up Thaddeus Young, whether it be waiving him or trading him, unless it's for a significant opportunity in return. Like, let's say in a fantasy world that Kawhi Leonard declines his player option and he somehow wants to come play for Chicago. Again, this would never happen, but go with me on this. If Kawhi said to the Bulls front office, I want to come and play in Chicago and I want a max contract, and if the Bulls had to clear up cap space in order to bring in Kawhi, then yeah, you move on from Thaddeus Young, whether it be through waiving him or trading him in order to free up that available cap space to get Kawhi Leonard. That's a no-brainer. Or say the Bulls want to trade for Ben Simmons, which, yes, I know a lot of Bulls fans don't like, but I've said it before in recent videos, Ben Simmons would make a ton of sense on this roster as long as you don't have to give up too much for him, meaning if you don't have to give up Lavine, Vucevic, or Patrick Williams in a package. So if Thaddeus was included in a trade package to get Ben Simmons, you do that. Or say the Bulls had the opportunity to bring in someone like Mike Conley, Kyle Lowry, or Lonzo Ball as a free agent, but they just needed an additional $5 million or so to free up enough cap space to get there by waiving Thaddeus, then yeah, you could bring in said player. Yeah, I think it's worth it. Because look, as much as I like Thaddeus Young, and I think he's very valuable to the team, the fact of the matter is he isn't part of the Bulls' long-term plan. He's going to be 33, and sorry, actually, he is already 33. His birthday was earlier this week. Happy birthday, by the way, Thad. And here I am making a video on how he doesn't fit the Bulls' long-term roster when it's near his birthday. But he's 33. He's on an expiring contract. I don't see the Bulls offering him an extension after his contract expires, even if they do fully guarantee it. So if you have an opportunity to bring in a big name or a player that fits a desperate need for the team, it's probably worth it to move on from Thad. Now, on the flip side, if the Bulls are kind of striking out in free agency and there just isn't a lot of good trade options out there or deals to be had, then no, you absolutely keep Thaddeus and fully guarantee his final year of his contract and keep him on the roster for next season. Like, why waive him and pay part of his salary when you're not really going to be able to make any improvements to the roster anyway? At that point, you're freeing up cap space on an expiring deal for nothing if you can't bring anybody in and losing a quality player as a result. Now, I've said it in, past before and making my offseason prediction videos on who will remain with the Bulls next season and who will be going elsewhere, and I actually said that I believe Thaddeus will remain on the team with the Bulls for the final year of his contract. And if I had to take a guess, I would still stick with that prediction, although I am starting to sway in the other direction that if Arturas is looking to be aggressive this offseason, he may need to free up the necessary cap space to bring in some key players, which may mean Thaddeus' contract needs to be taken off the books. But I'm still in the Thad staying camp, probably 60% believing he stays, 40% he's gone. I want to know what you guys think though. Do you think that the front office will fully guarantee Thaddeus' contract and have him remain with the Bulls for one more season, or do you think he's likely going to be moving on to another team, whether it be in the form of waiving him to free up cap space or even trading him to not only free up cap space but trading him for a piece that is more of a long-term fit for the Bulls? Let me know in the comments, and as always guys, be sure to subscribe as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one.